In light of all the tons of interesting things going on at Arsenal right now, we've done the only thing I could think of, which is ask you what you want to discuss on the pod. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Gunner. That's right. I don't know what to talk about, so this is where I outsourced it. I just said, can you send in questions? And you did. You did. Thank you for doing it. Pulling them in for the pod and then giving you the pod that you asked for. So really, if this pod is terrible, I think we know you are the only one to blame, frankly, right? That seems fair. Thank you for being here. Love you for being here. Hope you enjoyed the bonus pod we put out on Black Arsenal, the new book coming out celebrating Black identity and culture and the association with Arsenal, the club. And I think it was a great conversation with one of the authors of that book and some good interviews. I know the Paul Davis interview was a little hard to hear. There was a lot of noise in the background, and I think Tim was struggling to isolate his voice as well as he could, which I totally understand in that environment. But we did the best we could. But I hope you enjoyed that episode. We did a Sterling scouting video over on Patreon that I think is worth checking out. So if you'd like to get over there, I think you would really enjoy that. We're also doing a power rankings tomorrow, which is basically just Schadenfreude for Chelsea, for United, for Tottenham. So yeah, just a lot of good stuff going on. And you know, we're going to get through this interlull together because we've got all these easy fixtures right after the interlull. We, just Spurs away and Atalanta away and City away. Easy peasy. No problem. Good thing is nobody's missing from the squad. We've got everybody fit. Oh, no, we don't. Anyway, so here with me now is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at Pause My Pants. I'll pause.
Woohoo!
This is who shows up on the interlull. You and me, buddy.
Yep. As
Clive
always, the old reliables.
Nah. Tim said nah. But here we are. Keeping the fire burning. We are the old reliables. And that's really the only reason we're still here. Because someone's got to do interlull pods, right?
Yeah, us.
We're the interlull pods. So we're gonna do questions, listener questions today. Mm-hmm. Pull some off social media, pull some off of Discord as well. We'll start with Jackosaurus on Discord. Just an easy one. How many minutes do you think Sterling's gonna get?
Ooh. Give me a baseline as to what minutes look. So we're talking PL minutes, right? The more meaningful.
Let's do Premier League, yeah. Because could he play in the Cups? Could he do that? I don't know how we extrapolate that out. So let's just do Premier League minutes, and just to give you a sense, like Leo Trossard last season started 18 games, made 34 appearances, played 1,650 minutes, 1,649 minutes. Okay. So that gives you sort of a rotational option. Martinelli played 2,000 minutes, more than I might have thought. I don't think I really thought that he played more minutes than Trossard, but there you have it. Gabriel Jesus played 1,478 minutes. So what do you think is realistic for Sterling?
So I was just thinking about him this morning. I'm wondering, did we are we still under-excited about Sterling because of how he came in, because it was last minute, because it seems like almost an afterthought. We're like, yeah, why not? Combined with, his, has he begun to fall off that cliff, or our age curve concept, and, has he lost that step, etc. And there's a very interesting range of outcomes possible with Sterling. I guess I'm getting pretty excited based on nothing that actually he could be quite a substantial contributor this season. And even I, who get excited about new signings, maybe have done him a little disservice. I said this on the last pod, and I've been thinking about it since. I think I was very clever when I said this. I think he almost combines the best of Martinelli and Trossard. And if he hits, they're going to find it hard to start to displace him after a little while. And I think people will know what I mean. He can play wide. He's got speed. Does he have the same speed he had before? I don't know. But he probably doesn't need all of that speed. He's not going to be running in behind the whole time. He's got more speed than Trossard. He's got more ability to hold width than Trossard. And he's got more precision in the box than Martinelli has been showing lately. And so I'm going to go with Martinelli was at 2,000. I mean, he's going to have to split it with three guys and find spots around, maybe on the right-hand side. I'd say 2,000 is a a good target for him to hit. He could be quite difficult to shift if he scores a couple in his first few games and plays well. And I think one of the things that Trossard doesn't necessarily give us is Arteta's full game in terms of what he's looking for off that wing. So if he can combine the best of both, it's going to be hard to shift.
That's a really, really good answer. I'm pretty sure you at no point listed the minutes he would play.
2000, I did. It's on record.
Okay. Got it.
You done me dirty there.
I did do you dirty. Well, to be fair, while you were talking, I had other things to do. So now I am fired up.
As did our listeners.
Well, so I was having some technical issues getting all the questions I wanted to ask sorted out. So at one point there, I had to quickly slide them aside. So I do apologize. I think 2000 is a fantastic shout. I really do, Paul. I think he will play. So here's the thing. I don't think he will start Premier League games off the right unless something's wrong with Saka, right? Like he's injured or something. Maybe if we've had a tough, Champions League game midweek and we're playing a bottom team at home, like maybe he could start for Saka on the right. I think most of his starts on the right will happen in Champions League and FA Cup and League Cup and things like that where we want to rest Saka. I do think he will start a bunch on the left. The hard thing about getting him to 2,000 minutes is like, if he gets to 2,000 minutes, Paul, one of Martinelli or both of Martinelli and Trossard are going to find themselves very much on the outside looking in. And that's an interesting and tricky situation. He could play through the middle if Jesus struggles to stay fit and we have games where we need Kai in midfield or Kai needs a rest, he could play there. So it feels like it's going to be an interesting balancing act. And I guess what I would ask you just as a quick follow-up, who do you see most likely odd man out if Sterling is really good for us?
Trossard has almost put up his hand to say he thinks he's the odd man out.
Or his agent has, anyway.
Yeah, but, agents tend to talk to their clients before they do that. And Trossard did look a little grumpy when he scored that goal, which is an unusual time to look a bit grumpy. It was almost like he was trying to say something. So, Martinelli has a long-term future at the club, whether he's our out-and-out starter on that wing or he's just a really good competes for the left wing. It depends on his trajectory a little bit. It's hard to see past Martinelli as being the guy of the two of them that has the medium long-term future for the club. Of course, he's still got to get back to the levels and then continue to grow. It is a spot that I was thinking, like, he's one of those players I love and I want to protect, and he's a guy, I don't want Mikel to screw over as we become more and more ambitious and keep upgrading places. There's him, there's Gabriel Magalhaes. I'm like, no, find other ways to make us better. Leave my boys alone. But that is a spot where we're not yet world class, and Mikel's going to be looking for that next step, and it needs to be Martinelli or it'll be somewhere else. It could be Sterling for a year, for a season, because he's ready, he's at the level, he knows how to do that job if he can kick in, and Martinelli has that year to compete with and learn from Raheem Sterling, to learn how to do Raheem Sterling things, to add those to his game.
Yeah. Do you have in your mind a target, not just for minutes, but for sort of goals and assists output from Sterling that you think? We got a lot of questions. So, in fact, since we're on the Sterling thing, let me ask you this. A lot of people asked it, so I apologize for not crediting anybody specifically, but basically, what goals and assists total, or what would have to happen, and could anything happen, where you would be inclined to give Sterling a contract at the end of this loan?
Yeah. So it wouldn't be a goal. It would be, does he play at the top level again, or very near the top level again? Goals and assists. Goals probably like to get a contract, he needs to be playing. He probably ends up being mostly our go-to starter. So you'd want 10, 11 goals from him and some number of assists, maybe 5 assists or some blend of those. If he's given us a couple more assists and a couple less goals, and it's all just kind of working. But it does tease you that it does feel kind of binary. He's either going to click and he's at the level, and if he is, he's going to give Mikel Arteta a huge amount of what he's looking for from Martinelli / Trossard that he doesn't get from either one of them at the moment.
I'll tell you this. Yeah. With the scouting video, the one thing that jumped out at me is the burst is still there. The ability to go from stop to go.
Yeah.
Right? The acceleration and the burst is still there. Yeah. And I think we needed to
add that. With it. He's got such close control with the ball under his feet.
But we better be prepared for some dreadful final third decision making. It's been in his locker his whole career. It's going to still be there. There's, if you have Jesus on one flank and Sterling on the other, like there's going to be some moments where you're pulling your hair out with the final decision making. That's just the reality. Paul, I would say this. I think he is going to be a success, and I would not under any circumstances sign him to a contract at the end of the loan. I think it is sort of the last thing we want to be doing. Now, first of all, I mean, you would think it'd be pretty expensive because if he has a good season, there'll probably be people that are willing to invest in him. But I wouldn't want it to be us, and I'll say it like this. Clearly, before we loaned Sterling, there were other players we regarded as the better long-term purchase option, players we were excited to have to bring in permanently. And I'd rather we do those things than commit to someone who after this season will be entering their 31 and 32-year-old seasons if we put him on a 2+1 type contract. Now, you could say, look, lock in Sterling, sell Trossard. Maybe you even have to sell Jesus if he's just unable to stay fit. How do you sell a player who can't stay fit? But, it's time for him to move on. And you say, we're going to keep Sterling on a 2+1, but also go get additional attackers. That might be the only scenario where it makes sense. If you say, for example, we're going to stick with Martinelli, Saka, Kai, Sterling, move Trossard and Jesus, and go get a couple other guys, or at least one sort of premium level player on a permanent move, then I guess I could see it. Because you're essentially saying we think we can get more from Sterling in the next 2 seasons than we get from Trossard, and that's fine. But do you follow my logic, which is essentially, I still think we might be one long-term big-time star forward away from reaching our full potential. And no matter how good Sterling is, I don't think 31 and 32-year-old Sterling is that guy. So I still want to make sure we don't lock ourselves into something that prevents us from getting that guy.
Okay, let me take the other side of it, because I do think there's a case to be made that if it turns out he's really, really good, then he's also really, really ready. And we have seen, okay, that's a position where speed kills.
Is it the Aubameyang thing again, though? Like you're rewarding someone for what they've done when they're probably entering the period where they will struggle to reproduce it.
No. The Aubameyang thing would be he was at the club and he was the captain and he'd done great things, and we weren't ready to take the risk of moving away from the guy.
Right. I didn't mean it that way, Paul. I meant in terms of you're giving a contract for what the player has done previously that may not reflect what they're capable of doing going forward.
Well, you absolutely shouldn't do that. So, but there's no, but there were reasons why you would do that with Aubameyang. But Sterling isn't our player. We have no ties to him, right? So you're only projecting what you think will come next. Now, if you do that badly, you screwed up. You signed an older guy for a lot of money. But Man City have players who are 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. They just signed one back that they got rid of, Gundogan, who went off to Barcelona to chew on the cud and get a last contract, and they've decided
he had a gap year. It was a gap year. He just went to discover himself in Barcelona.
But he's 33, right? What's De Bruyne? Isn't he 33?
32
Salah?
Maybe.
Liverpool's about to offer Salah a contract, probably. Does it meet Salah's needs and the back and forward? These guys are old and they're producing. And so let's make this spicy. I have an issue with you and age curves, Elliot. Maybe it's because I'm old, right? But maybe
From a football standpoint, there is no debating you've gone over the age cliff. Like, we're not signing you. That's just not happening.
Well, all right. But let's take me, right?
Okay.
I just might be the exception. And age curves are an average. And you see it all the time. That you're right in the average and you're right taking a blind view. But when you know so much about an individual player, he's not the average. And Rodri's getting on a bit. De Bruyne is over the hill. Gundogan's over the hill, etc., etc. There are Salah. There are what's his name? VVD. Not a disease. A centre back for Liverpool. Like, these guys are old, but you want them for the next 2 years. And Mikel Arteta may not be here in 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, especially if we don't kick on that next level. There's a case to be said if Sterling's good and we have him in our lab for a season and we say his levels, here's where we project, here's what's next. He has, I think, a fairly excellent injury record. And that's the other issue I have with the age curve, which I agree with in general, that it's a thing. Individual players are at different individual curves, depending. He has a lot of minutes. He has very few injuries for a guy who's had a lot of minutes. That's a judgment that only I can't tell you, but if I worked at the club, what I project his next 2-3 years are and what I would pay for them.
So I want to be clear about something because I essentially agree with you. Bell curves in general don't apply to an individual. They apply to a population, right? They tell you where the distribution of outcomes is, right? So some people start declining in their early 20s. Some people start declining in their mid 30s. But the distribution of outcomes is what you look at to say, what is the most likely outcome for a population? An individual can only be 1 point on that curve, right?
Yeah.
So that individual
and he has
could
his own
be
curve, right? He has his own curve.
And he doesn't even have a curve, really.
Well, he does.
Right. You mean in terms of the slope of his decline?
Yeah.
It could be steep,
and
it
they
could
can
be flat.
project that. Now, if he gets an injury, that's the risk with somebody older. If it gets an injury, like, you can really fall off. Whereas if you're younger, you can heal, you got a bit of time, you can get back to. Whereas he has a window of 2-3 years to perform, and if he gets an injury in the middle of that, you could be like screwed on both sides of that.
But I think here's what we'd say, right?
He has a curve.
Sure,
and
of course.
It's not the average.
But the problem is what you're saying essentially with any individual is they could wind up being Cristiano Ronaldo, right? They could be Mohamed Salah. They could be Jack Wilshere.
Yeah. And I'm saying he has a curve today. Not they could be in the future. He is now on a specific curve that is not the average. I'm not saying it's better or worse, but it's like our internal pros for sports fitness have a curve for this guy, or could plot a curve that says, here's where he's at.
We're getting in the weeds a bit, and I want to sort of zoom back out a little bit here, because I think the point, though, Paul, and this is what I want to make sure we agree on, we're trying to build a team that wins everything, and the winning window for that team is the next 2 or 3 seasons after this one.
Yeah.
Eventually there'll be a new project that has to be started. And I don't think you want to hinge this winning window on 31, 32, 33-year-old Raheem Sterling unless there were additional investments made. So I guess what I would say is, if I told you we were going to go to bat again the next 3 seasons with Kai, Jesus, Saka, Martinelli, Trossard, Sterling, then I'm not okay with it. I'm okay if it's Sterling stays, Trossard goes, but we get another big early prime age kind of player to come help us win all this stuff.
Yeah.
Do you at least agree with sort of that theoretically, tactically, that Sterling could be someone if he's good enough? And by the way, he hasn't played a minute for us, so this could look really dumb in even a month. But Sterling's a guy who, if he plays well for us and sort of takes the squad position of a Trossard or a Jesus, is fine as long as we go that extra mile and get that guy, that whoever he was, that we didn't get this window,
Yeah, absolutely. We need another worldie in that attacking lineup.
Yeah.
And the other knock against Sterling is really, really expensive to purchase. But like, we have leverage and he has leverage. He can just fold his arms and say, I'm not taking any of your options, Chelsea. Here's where I want to go. go and work out a reasonable deal with them that Arsenal are. So the deal part could get sorted because actually Raheem is in control to some
Yeah.
degree.
I can see a world where it makes sense. I'll put it that way. You know, the one thing that
Yeah.
does bother me, by the way, though, when people push back against something like the age curve, people always point to the outliers who beat the traditional age curve projections. For the
Hmm.
record, they almost always tend to be some of the most outstanding players in the history of the game. The elite level players, because you don't notice their drop off as much, because like if you're Messi and you're 10% less good, you're still better than every player in the world, right? Salah, 10% less good, is still one of the top wingers in the world. What annoys
I
me
got
is
I got one for you.
people, well, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I get your point. James Milner, not one of the best players in the world, worth keeping around.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. There are players
And
like
I
that, and
think
they're
there's
worth
a laziness.
Jorginho, you know.
Yeah.
Well, we
Yeah,
don't
I
know if
think
he's
there's
worth
a
keeping because he doesn't play
laziness.
currently, but yeah.
Yeah. Based on no facts, I think there's a laziness that clubs won't take the risk because they're like, he's old. I'm not going to take the risk. If he falls off, he's no use. There is a line where, oh, he drops a bit more than we thought, and now he's no use and we can't use him. That's the problem with an average guy, right?
Yeah,
But
I just
yeah,
think people are always so willing to point to the guys
yeah, yeah.
who who are the what's the word I'm looking for? Not
Count
counterpoint, but
Dracula.
the yes. we finish
Was
each
that
other's
was that the word you
sandwiches.
were Dracula? Was that what you were looking for?
No,
Because that
no.
guy has lasted and lasted. What an age curve! Like he's getting stronger, if you ask me. He's actually anti-fragile.
Oh boy. No, but like, you know, for example, people always say, here are the guys who beat the age curve, and it proves it doesn't exist, but they're not as willing to say, here's the hundreds of guys who went in the toilet at 29, 30, 30. You know, here's Casemiro. You know, you
Yeah.
don't want that guy, do you? So
Yeah,
that's
but
a
you're always
question.
talking
Anyway.
about guys who totally like crapped out. Like you're the worst, right? Because you go
Hmm.
the other way. You talk about remember this guy who like was absolutely crap and disappeared because of his age curve. So
I
don't do
feel like
that
as long
either.
as I can keep saying Casemiro, I can scare people into not wanting anybody over the age of 30. Okay, so we've got other questions that aren't about
Really?
technical understanding of age curves, thank God.
Yeah.
And this one is, what can we learn from Sterling in his experience at his age? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Here's just a fun, easy one from Gold's at Gold 73. Team for the North London Derby. Who starts where? I mean, this is a
Wow.
tough one. I think it's one of the toughest. I think it's a lineup choice that Mikel is going to agonize over between now and kickoff, and it's one of the harder ones off to make. So, what do you think he'll go with? Well, let me ask you too: is what do you think he'll go with? But also, what do you is that what you'd go with, or would you do something different?
Right. So DM party. I'm going to go with the left Havertz at left 8. It's hard to think of another good option. Jesus, hopefully fit enough. Are we going to assume he's fit enough? Jesus or
That's right on the border. I don't know. We don't have an update on it.
because like who else is left 8 if it's not Havertz?
This is the problem. If Havertz has to start at striker, your midfield options get really uncomfortable. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to go Havertz left 8 and Jesus or Trossard, take your pick. Martinelli left wing. And maybe Calafiori is my. I mean, it's not that wild and ridiculous a pick, but he hasn't started for us. I think we're going to have to do a lot of defending in this game. Uh, what do I really think? I think he'd probably pick Timber, but I think it's going to be super close to Calafiori because there's going to be a lot going down. Like we could get a bit of a battering in terms of their attack for periods of this game. Um, Yeah,
Yeah.
probably
I would say
Timber
this.
and then Calafiori on earlier than you might expect.
I would say this, Paul, on the Calafiori thing. If he was back at Soba reality, if he was back at Colney
Ah,
this 2 weeks training with the team, I think he would start the derby. Given that he hasn't
yeah,
started a game for us
good
yet,
point.
and now he's gone for the international break, the idea that Mikel's going to feel comfortable with him having been gone 2 weeks, not having started for us and starting, I think is unlikely.
You are
I
correct.
would like it to be Calafiori, candidly. I think that would be great. And I think it would fit the game, but I think it will be Timber. I have this weird feeling that Norberto Neto will start. No, I'm just kidding. Can you imagine? But like, I do think that the front three is an interesting one because Sterling is there. I think Trossard and Martinelli are there also. So they're all there. Sterling has been training at right wing. If the
That'll
training
be
videos,
fun for the three of them.
yeah. I mean, all competing for one
Yeah.
another's jobs. If Jesus is fit, I would go Jesus, Sterling, and Saka. I would do that. And then I'd play Kai, Odegaard, and probably Thomas Partey in midfield. I mean, to your point that we're going to have to do a lot of defending, it's not that I think we're going to have to do a lot of defending. Like, we're deep and we're in our 4-4-2 block and we're repelling them from the final third. I think we'll have to do a lot of defending in space because I could see this game being very stretched. And that's what scares me because actually I think we're fine when we're in our block, but we have looked vulnerable in space. And I do think the Thomas Partey component of that is a question. And without Rice to come try to help that out, and Odegaard, Kai being the one who's meant to sort of try to drop back in and support him, it does feel vulnerable. Would you have any thought of trying something sort of exotic? We got a lot of questions about this, things like Timber in midfield or, Calafiori in midfield, something a little unorthodox.
No. I've seen a few California, we're never going to play those guys in midfield. Now, it's good to be open-minded. But as you know, I'm not very good at that. There's no chance Mikel's going to play these guys, especially out of the blue, in midfield. No, we won't. He might tell Kai to be more midfield-minded, more defensive-minded than making runs in behind. Like, he could tweak it
That's the
that way.
problem.
But
You can't play a double pivot with Kai, though. That's not going to work. Could you see a world where it's Partey, Jorginho, and Odegaard? Like a true, almost like a 4-2-3-1? We've never really done it. I mean, not for years anyway.
Yeah, no. I couldn't see a world in which we do that. I think but you can tell Kai Havertz not to make as many runs in behind, to be just a little more conservative, as opposed to sit back and be a double pivot. And he's pretty disciplined and good in the battle, good in the tackle, I think. I mean, he picks up his, forces a turnover and off we go. I think you can ask him to be more pressy, midfieldy, force a turnover, a little bit less looking to get in behind as the left eight. So you can dial it back a little bit, but no, you don't ask him to be a double pivot. There are degrees. It's a slider. I think that's where you make your tweaks, and your other tweak is whether you have Calafiori.
You got it. You got this.
And Timber.
Just call him Ricardo.
Between those two. Timber's more your midfield option at this stage because he's done it. So I think if you want a bit more midfield presence, look, that's why you go for Timber. He's had more experience partnering Partey in midfield as kind of in the space of the double pivot, even if he's not the double pivot. So it's definitely going to be Timber for one more reason. A little bit more partnering with Partey.
Yeah, it's so painful not having Marino for this game because absent Rice, it just would have made everything feel a lot easier. I mean, I have a hard time seeing how we control this game, given that I don't think we've controlled games well so far. But here's an interesting question then from Bo at Bo Buckland. Am I mad for feeling upbeat around the start of the season? Despite injuries, we're a point ahead of last year based on the same fixtures played. Feels a bit doomy and gloomy very early. And I have to agree. I think there is a bit of doom and gloom. Now, look, some of that I think is based on the two fixtures we have coming up. And in the context of dropping points we didn't expect to, and not having Rice for the derby, and all of that has sort of conspired, I think, to make the start feel worse than it is. But I will defend the doomy and gloomy people only in this respect. I'm seeing things done to us that weren't done to us a lot last season in terms of being able to get in behind our press, turn our midfielders around, and get people running at our goal and running through our midfield. You look at the pass that was played to create Brighton's goal, being able to play a ball right through the center of our midfield and through the center of our defense into a player. I know we were down to 10 men, but that's just not something you see. So Paul, what do you think about that? I mean, is Bo mad for feeling upbeat around the start of the season, or are we maybe spoiled brats?
Why not both? He might be a little mad. I think what he's forgotten is how badly we feel when we lose, which is
Mm.
very, very badly. So you come into the season and you got this optimism and you got this pressure with this tough run of games to stay in the run in with blow for blow with City and Liverpool. And if you drop any points, you're screwed because it's City. We're very much all in that mindset. If you drop any points, you're dead against City, which is not true. So I think we're just a little reactive that you make any false move, any slip up, you're screwed. It's not the case. We're allowed to drop something like 20 points and we'd still have 94 points at the end of the season. So, dropped them a little earlier than we wanted, but we beat Villa, who we lost to twice last season. If we beat them twice this season, we'll be 6 points ahead of last season on that one metric, and we dropped other points down the table. The tough thing for us this season will be the big games where we really can't outperform last season. We got 4 points against City. I think it was 4 against Liverpool, 4 against maybe United, was it?
Mm.
We 4 against the Spuds, 6 against Chelsea. It's just going to be tough to replicate that against the top 6 or so teams. But hey, if we get 6 against Villa, we're 6 ahead there. And we had a slow start last year. It's a better start this year. Are we vulnerable down the middle? Well, if we're playing Morgan Rogers, probably a little bit. If we're playing with 10 men, probably yes. I think we're going to be fine. It might be a month or two before we have everybody in there fit and firing, but I think it'll only be another game or two before Stella's got her groove on, and
Mm.
we'll really see us playing our full football in both directions. There's no reason we shouldn't be more solid.
Yeah, I think it's for me the cause for concern is that I've kind of come to terms with the fact that our attack won't always look swashbuckling, but because we're so impossible to break down, we do tend to create enough, get a goal, and start to lean on teams and beat them. And I realize, look, we broke our goals scored record last season. We were winning by 5s and 6s, but I think the bedrock of this Arteta renaissance is solidity, structure, out of possession quality, right? That old comment that was made all last season, Arsenal are the best out of possession team in the world. Well, we don't look like that currently. And if that's our identity and that's foundational to everything we do, if that's not the case at the moment, then you wonder if it becomes the Jenga block that makes the tower fall down. And so I'd like to see the best out of possession team in the world rear its head again. I also think there's just a little bit of eyebrow raising at certain roles, like Rice being so far up the pitch and not really having the start to the season we would necessarily want to see from him, for example. So little things like that. We're still figuring out who the left back is and how they're going to play. But I think to your point, yes, we're good enough that even when we're not totally clicked, we're still right there as one of the best teams in the league, and that there will be clicking that happens. It's a shame we have to wait for Marino, but it is what it is. I'll ask this one because we got a lot of questions about it, and some of them were more pointed, some of them were more comically oriented. But Cartoon Steve Bold at Cartoon Boldy said, "Do you think Arteta is risking adherence to the fogging standards with his dedication to party?" Thomas Partey has started basically every game since he got back fit at the end of last season. Jorginho hasn't played at all. And there's the Orbinho stat that I think I've quoted before, but I'll just put it out there again because I think it's worth noting. And Orbinho, from Opta, this was actually before the recent games, which I think only furthers this point. But since Thomas Partey came back into the team in 2024, the expected goals against has doubled. So some of that is correlation, not causation, because we've just had some tough fixtures. We've had Villa at home and Villa away and Chelsea away and Spurs away. And, they're United away, as whether you want to class that as difficult or not. But what do you think about the dedication to Partey, starting every game since he's been back fit, and whether we make too much, not enough, or just the right amount about his inclusion?
I don't know. I think that's a study in progress. He's at least got to where his the ball's in front of him and he's passing and maybe even tackling in midfield. That part of his game seems to have suddenly got back to the levels I mostly remember. And that wasn't the case previously. You were kind of suffering with him on the ball and suffering with him without the ball. And now we're just suffering when he doesn't have the ball and he has to run backwards a bit. He looks a little snappier, a little faster, but still not fast enough. And around 60 minutes in a game, he doesn't seem to think it's his job specifically to run after people who have gone past him. But if he did run after them, he'd probably run a little faster than he did before. So, um, yeah, once the ball goes past him, he's kind of out of the game.
Can I
So
ask you a
we
question
better,
though?
yeah.
Because I really struggle with this, and I just want to know if you see it, because maybe it's not even a thing. Do you sense that our press hasn't been as effective, that there's something about where he goes on the pitch when we're out of possession that lets a midfielder drop in and find space? Because Billy Carpenter, in his latest newsletter, did a little bit on the midfield dynamic, and he showed something that I think was really instructive. And you and Clive hit on it in the last pod as well, how disconnected Rice and Partey are in terms of their distances from one another and how vulnerable that makes us when we turn over possession. But the other thing he pointed out was just a couple of times when the midfield dropped away out of possession. Say, if your midfielders don't stay high, you don't have a press. So do you think this is having an impact on our pressing?
Yeah, because till you get the Rice party dynamic right, you know, Party is always going to be looking over to his left to see that space there, an eye on things. If you think of the goal against Brighton where they split us up the middle, Party was darting to his left initially to cover a man in midfield before everything went charging past him. And he's got way too much space for him to cover. And you don't want that gap between him, not so much that he's screening the back line, but in being in position to screen the back line means the back line is close to him, so that Gabriel can jump into midfield, so that Saliba can jump in and around him. I do think the biggest issue is I don't really understand what we're doing with Rice on the left 8 side of things. We're pushing him up. We're not passing to him. We're not really using him very much as the left 8 passing hub. There's no equivalent to what we're doing on the right hand side, but he's well up and away from Party. I don't think I don't get it. I don't think it really makes sense to me with or without the ball. He's got too much work to do when we lose the ball, and with the ball we don't really use him that much. We don't. There's no pattern of play on the left hand side. I'd love to hear something from Mikel that explains what we're doing on the left hand side. If you told me he was pushed up on the left because he was going to run in behind or because he was, aggressively pressing their back line, I mean, I get it. It just doesn't seem worth the
Yeah.
trade-off.
And this is where I think we have to be really careful, because I'll be honest, and this is not a position I ever expected to find myself taking, but the more I've watched the games from this season, I think Thomas Partey has been mostly outrageously good on the ball. And I think Mikel lets Partey operate in more space because he can progress the ball better than anyone we have. He's just really, really good at it. It's just the reality. He splits players. He breaks lines. He finds Saka in positions other players don't find him. He's very, very good at that. And here's the problem with the out of possession thing. While my instinct is that Thomas Partey is causing us issues out of possession, how a team looks out of possession is also based on instruction to a degree we can't intuit. It is difficult for me to say all our out of possession problems are related to Thomas Partey because I don't know why Mikel has players standing where he has them standing, and I don't know if they're doing the thing they're meant to be doing. So my instinct is we need to put Rice at 6 and Marino at 8, but until November-ish, we're not going to see that. And it's pretty clear he doesn't want Jorginho or doesn't feel he can. Maybe we'll find out when we're playing 3 times a week, because there's no way Thomas Partey is starting at Spurs, at Atalanta, at the Etihad. Like that can't work. So I think we're going to find out very soon what the manager thinks the alternatives are. And we'll get a look at how those work and if we look different when we bring them in. Let's do this. We got a lot of interesting questions to get to about a whole variety of topics that aren't about age curves, thankfully. So let me just mention that we are all people that try to watch videos on the internet. And we often try to watch videos on the internet that geographically we're unable to access. Well, NordVPN's got the solution for you. And let me tell you something. Of all the things we ever talk about on the pod from a advertising standpoint, Nord is the one I get the most questions about, the one I get the most requests for our promo code. So Nord works on iPads and iPhones and MacBooks and PCs and Androids and all different types of tablets. It's got an app where you just click where you want to be browsing, and immediately that device thinks you're browsing there, which means if there's a video on the internet that says not available in your location, now it's available in your location. If you want to, you can actually sign up for streaming services in a foreign country where it's cheaper, and then your monthly subscription for that streaming service is at that price instead of the one it would be for you. If you want to watch, when I go to England and I want to watch the football matches that I'm allowed to watch on my service that I have here in the US, well, I can simply VPN back to the US. And we did that. We had a patron meetup at a pub in Islington, and United were playing Fulham last season. VPN back to the US, put the game on my phone. We all crowded around and watched Alex Iwobi score a late winner to beat United. And it was a brilliant part of that experience. So Nord also has threat protection. It's really just a great, easy, high-speed VPN. You should give it a try. We got a really good exclusive, by the way, from Nord for being a good partner for them. So you can go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 free months, plus risk-free Nord 30-day guarantee. So nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision, get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, 4 additional months on top, and it's completely risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. Paul, that's enough of that.
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay. Lots more questions to get to. Here we go. So I think there's a couple of things that are sort of interesting. By the way, W. Gary 1987 says, how come we never have any doorbell interruptions on the pod? And should that event arise, do you have some funky music lined up and ready to go? There's so many answers to this. One, no one ever comes to our door. We are pariahs in our community. So that's why there's no doorbell ringing. And then 2 is I wouldn't know how to put the music in. Mr. Giddis asks, who gets red carded in the NLD and what for? I don't know who it'll be, but it'll be for nothing. That's how this works. Colonel, except it's spelled like Colonel Colonel, asks, how do I get over the Brighton draw? Simple. You retweet or reshare every video of a player not getting booked for touching a ball before the free kick is taken for the rest of the season until madness creeps in. So I think that's that's one we can discuss there. Here's a question for you really quickly, Paul. I don't want to get bogged down in this, so let's do it quick. Added Demolisher says, is tribalism the cause for referees being allowed to get away with their incompetence? I really do think that in general, we don't do a good enough job across clubs of banding together and demanding improvements. And I think refereeing controversies get swept under the rug quickly because they're much more easily framed as one fan base just being crazy and self-absorbed, rather than all fan bases connecting and saying, when a bad call happens to one club, it happens to all clubs because these incompetent referees eventually will screw us over.
Yeah, no, I think it's the volume of incompetence that has us in trouble here, rather than the fan reaction. I think the hope of fans banding together, I mean, we don't. It's not a it's not a bug. It's a feature of the software. That's why you like football. Tribalism. Look, we love it when other clubs get screwed over by a terrible call. It's like one of our favorite things. We get tremendous entertainment from it. One of the interesting things about this Rice double yellow was how many fans of other clubs said, I mean, they weren't going to go to bat for us, but they were like, yeah, okay, that one sucks. That one's wrong. If that happened to us, I'd be apoplectic. I don't know if that person actually spelt that correctly, but they possibly did. So, it's just, that won't be the answer. Fans banding together. Like, we hate the other guys. I mean, in a football-y way, we hate them. We love their misfortune is our joy. and vice versa. And it should
Yes, that's
always
the
be
problem,
so.
though.
And don't knock it. That's why you love football. Like
Mhm.
you, Elliot, you love United's misfortune.
I
It's your
do.
favorite thing.
I do. But when a terrible call goes against them because referees are incompetent,
Yeah.
I laugh at it and I laugh off United fans being mad about it. And that just allows the PGMOL to not have any real pressure put on them to make change. I mean, look, the obvious change to me has been clear for a long time, which is expand the pool of talent. Just expand the pool of talent, bring in referees that aren't all from greater Manchester area, and maybe this could be fixed, but we'll see. Question for you. Alex Wood at Luca Japanese asks, with Tierney back in training photos, do you see any involvement from him in the first team this season? This is a quick one because I think the answer is 2 letters.
No, except if he's around long enough. Like, obviously, we want something for him. For his own sake, a loan, a move, or whatever. And we have a couple of cups. So, could he show up in a couple of cups if he's still around and we haven't found a move for him to get him going? Yeah, it would be cruel not to if we can get him some minutes in a couple of the cups.
How do we get him those though?
By playing him.
No, but you know what? Like, because here's the thing. Like, the problem is he plays in a position where, as it turns out, we've got quite a lot of players that would like to have minutes, and so, like the Bolton game, you'd say, oh well, there you go, Bolton in the League Cup midweek. That's a Tierney start. Except that could be the game that Mikel says, I'm going to start Calafiori and get him a start where he feels ready to then start Premier League games. Or he may have a returning to fitness Tomiyasu who he says, I'd like to get him an hour to spin him back up to fitness. Or he might look at Zinchenko, who's saying, where are my minutes going to come from? And he says, they're going to come from here. Plus, it's a weaker team, so we want your ball progression. Like, there are 4 guys between Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, Calafiori, and Timber who will want minutes. They all play at least somewhat at left back. I just don't even know if the 5th guy has a way to get in at all,
Yeah, I see that, but Calafiori could play left center back, or Timber could play right full back, and like it won't be easy. But the question was, can I see a scenario? At least that's my interpretation. What's the scenario where he could, or would it be like I could see why we'd want to get him a few minutes, as opposed to it's pretty tough when you're training for 6 months till January if we don't get him a loan move and you're never used for 1 minute. I mean, that's just cruelty to intelligent animals. So that will be how the cups, a few minutes, feeling involved, feeling you might get the call and actually getting the call, but it's not easy, and won't be in game 1 or 2. I mean, he's nowhere near fit anyway. But don't worry, it'll probably be sorted out if he gets another injury between now and January, which is very possible. Yeah, he might get a few minutes as a sub in the cups.
Okay, so this question I'm going to modify, but I want to read it as it is because I think it's interesting. Pierce Hamilton says, if you could be guaranteed 85 points right now, which includes 2 points against City, would you roll the dice on no one beating that total, or do you think we need more than that to win the league? Now, the answer is, of course, I'm not going to roll the dice on that total. And the reason is that total has won the league once in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Once in the last 13 seasons, and that was the Leicester season. And I mean, how many times ever? In the 2000s, that you would have been champions, I think, 3 times ever. So no, I'm not taking that total. But let me ask you this, Paul. If you could have the 89 points again, right now, you just get it. 89 points and 2 draws against Manchester City. Would you take that and let the chips fall where they may?
Well, if you assume Liverpool, I mean, they could be a bit better than last season, but I guess that's not the safest bet necessarily. Would I take 89 as the gamble? No, I think you still need a couple more. I mean, City don't look less strong than last season. They seem to be starting maybe slightly stronger. They look they look on it. I don't
With
think.
89 points, you would have won one of the last 8 Premier Leagues. So it's still
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
it's not looking good. Yeah.
yeah. And then if I'm Mikel Arteta, it's no, because I'm trying to get this team to a level, right? And that level each year must be higher than the previous year. So I got to roll the dice that we can get it into the 90s. That has to be who this team is. We need to be stronger across the board, stronger in the Champions League, stronger in the cups. So as a straight up bet, a gamble, no, I still don't think it's enough. As manager of this team, as I delude myself I am sometimes, no, you still gotta. This team needs to go to the next step, the next level in terms of how they play. So no, you got to ask more. You got to deliver more. You can't come back. It, even already people are saying, has he done enough in last season as a manager to justify his position with the club? Because we still haven't won anything. Like it's like a shark in the water, Elliot. If you don't move forward, you die. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of true as the football club. We've got to push forward. We've got to push on. We've got to get to a higher level, whether or not we catch City or not.
Yep. All right. Millibot at Millie thinks so. Thinks so it is. Says, what's the best way to fix Millibot's words, not mine, the Martinelli issue? Do we just need to wait until Marino returns and hopefully that works, or is there more we can do before that? Be that the system or positionally, Martinelli himself, etc. Interested to hear your thoughts. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Millibot. I mean, what do you think, Martinelli? I have rated this guy on par with Saka at times. Clearly now I think I have to update that expectation. I think Saka has shown that he's just an exceptional and uniquely phenomenal level of player. I'd love Martinelli to start to look like the guy that I think he can be. I don't think he looks like that currently. And with Sterling coming in, it's a bit murkier. Is there anything that you think can be done that we're doing wrong to foster the improvement in Martinelli's game? Or is it just Martinelli needs to play better? I mean, we saw Trossard start on the left against Brighton, and it looked a lot like that didn't work either. So how do we get Martinelli looking more like the player we all thought he might be when he was tied for the lead, our top goal scoring season 2 seasons ago?
Yeah, so the shortest answer is also the dullest one, especially from me, which is Marino. Moving swiftly onwards, when was the last time that Martinelli had a good season? Xhaka played left 8, more of a midfielder in that spot, more of a guy who isn't bombing up and down himself, or hurtling into tackles himself. He's more positional, triangles, moves, patterns, making the move that opens a space for another guy, putting the pass between full back and center back. Just kind of basic, dull pattern play. And I think Martinelli needs a partner at left 8, and as Zinchenko or if Timber or Calafiori can find their passing boots on that side. When we compare him against Saka, like Saka's real strength over Martinelli in some ways is the fact that he can do more himself. He can be more self-standing against a deep or a mid block, against a defense that's somewhat set. But man, he gets a lot of help, right? We roll in Odegaard, we roll in White, we got Partey or Jorginho on that side, and Saliba available to fire balls up to him or to his, like the supply chain. What hurt Napoleon and Hitler in when they invaded Russia? What was it? It was the winter. Granted, Elliot, but it was the supply lines, right? Your extended supply lines. That's where they got hit by the counteractions, by the guerrilla warfare. I know what you're thinking, Elliot. And like, what is it that supports Saka attack? Our whole supply line as he invades Russia in winter is there. He's got White, he's got Odegaard, he's got the patterns. It's all set up for him. What's Martinelli have? He has chalk on the sideline. He has Rice doing a good job, but not having those patterns that a Xhaka, as I suspect a Marino will have, that gives him that pulls players towards him, that moves players around, that opens that up. So, no, I don't think this gets fixed till Marino shows up, is the short answer.
Well, we'll see. I certainly think the Spurs game is an interesting one because if he starts, you're going to get chances to run at them. You're not just going to be pinned on the touchline with 10 defenders behind the ball, keeping him barred from getting into the box. So it'll be interesting. Okay, here's a terrible one. I don't like the framing of it, but I think the question is important. So text only version in the Discord says, terrible and completely hypothetical news. Martin Odegaard has been injured and he's out for 10 games after the international break. Now our squad is locked in until January. Who steps in and how do we function? I find this question fascinating because while everybody was clamoring for us to add a forward, before Sterling came in, we still had 5 good forwards, and they were the same 5 that got us our 92, 91, whatever it is, goals last season. In midfield, I think things are a lot murkier. So you got 10 Premier League games plus all the Champions League games plus all that without Odegaard. How are you getting through it?
So 2 versions of the answer right now, and when Marino's fit, because when Marino's fit, you got options, and you could play Havertz at right 8. You can actually play Marino at right 8 and drop Havertz in at left 8. Without Marino, your options are getting pretty thin because Nwaneri, I think, would really get a chance to show what he can do, but you can't be playing him for 90 minutes. He might have a good game, but he won't have 3 good games in a row because that's not what happens with kids. So what's your option? We're pretty thin there, right? I mean, there isn't a great option. I think you're like what I would be tempted to try out as a radical approach if we're looking for, apart from the obvious, well, you could play Havertz there and then Rice at left 8 and then Partey as the DM. If we wanted something a little more creative, I would try Partey out in the Odegaard role. Now, he's not much of a presser, so you're going to lose out on the whole thing Odegaard does from a pressing standpoint. But you could use other players to press and have Partey drop back into the midfield. But Partey is the right 8, clever passer, physical presence, creative. He can do a lot for you if you give him the freedom. No, don't do that to me, Elliot. If you give him the freedom to stay up the pitch, put Rice as your DM, Havertz as the left 8 maybe, or you got Jorginho behind them now. You got trouble whatever way you slice it. There's no great answer, but I think Partey can do a job at the right 8. I don't think we'll ever see it because who fills in behind him? We're pretty thin at right 8, basically.
I think this is the thing that I most don't understand about what we've done this summer. And it flows into another question that we can get to, because we have left ourselves with a very small squad. Silent Fox 1 asks, are we taking a giant risk with such a small squad? We were generally lucky on the injury front last season. I think lucky, sort of not, right? Obviously, we lost Timber for the whole season. We had a couple of other injuries, but by and large, yeah, we were pretty lucky. Look, there is no creative midfielder in the team apart from Odegaard. He's the only one. He's literally the only one. Marino does a bit of that, but not much of it. And I think the idea that you could play Marino at right 8 and Kai at left 8, to me, just for me, does not work. Because Marino is not a high volume, possession oriented passer. Kai is not either. Martin Odegaard is a high volume 90% passer who passes efficiently when he drops deeper and also passes efficiently when he moves up the pitch and also takes shots and also provides creativity for Saka and the striker, Havertz, whoever it is. I don't think we have another one. And the thing that's stunning to me, and people are going to roll their eyes out of their head, I cannot believe we let Fabio Vieira leave. I can't believe it. Look, Fabio Vieira has shown us very, very little. But Fabio Vieira is a senior footballer who is a last third midfielder who can take shots and provide assists. Like, he can. I'm not saying he's great at it, but he can. We literally don't own another player that has that profile other than a 17-year-old Nwaneri. And I think Nwaneri, when I've watched him anyway, is a lovely connective tissue player. But I'm not sure the last third stuff is in his game yet. And that's natural for a 17-year-old because that's the stuff that comes latest. So do I think Nwaneri should get minutes this season? I certainly do. I think he should get important minutes this season. But if Odegaard was out for 10 games, you're talking about stuff like Thomas Partey at the 8. You're talking about stuff like a 17-year-old at the 8 in a season where we want to get over 90 plus points. And the one guy that you could have said, hey, we bought him to be Odegaard's backup. Here's his moment. We got rid of him and left ourselves, in my opinion, with a single point of failure in Martin Odegaard. And by the way, we don't even have to think, what if he's out for 10 games? Who's going to play Atalanta away? Are we going to start him Spurs away, Atalanta away, City away? Probably. Are we going to start him Chelsea away, Inter away, Liverpool at home, that run? Probably. Is Martin Odegaard going to play every single game every 3 days this season? I know Mikel probably intends to do that, and I know there are players that do that. But I think it is a single point of failure, Paul, that more than any other position on the pitch is I think a place we don't naturally have any kind of alternative.
Well, you're right. And you saw me scrambling around to think what might actually hold water. But
because
the answer
none of them are great.
No. Yeah. But the answer, short answer on Vieira, I agree. You'd keep that profile around. You just wouldn't keep that player around because mentally, clearly what you hear and what you saw is he was playing well below his abilities. He might be a little homesick, a little bit. He thought it was going to be easier. He thought he was going to find his way. He came in with quite a bit of pizzazz, razzmatazz maybe, around his signing, and he's a million miles off having been able to demonstrate it. He looks like a guy who does not enjoy the Premier League and doesn't really like getting buffeted around. So, no, I wouldn't have kept Vieira, despite the fact that, yes, you're right, he's the best profile for it. Marino was the answer, but he's injured. If Marino were fit, you'd have that additional midfield and you'd do something that's maybe more Liverpool than Man City and Arsenal in terms of having very physical, athletic midfielders of Rice and Marino as your left and right 8, or you drop Havertz in as one of those and drop Rice back, or you have Partey back, and you basically have 3 very physical midfielders, and you sacrifice some of Odegaard's craft and control, and you just go a little bit more for 10 games only. Balls out Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp, heavy metal as opposed to sweet symphony and jazz. And you live with the fact that you don't have a like for like, and you play different. You play more physical, you play more direct, you force more turnovers, and use Marino, Rice, Havertz, Partey, some combination of those 3 in midfield, and make it work with a bit of Nwaneri off the bench.
Is my worry though warranted?
No, because Martin Odegaard is a titanium player who will, in fact, be available for basically every Premier League game. There was the reporting,
premise, but surely he won't play every single game, which means at a minimum there are some where we have to do something.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out what the thinking is. I don't know what it is, apart from Marina can play a little bit on the right, and therefore you can use Rice or Havertz as left 8. We're a bit thin. We're a bit thin, I will grant you.
Do you think we're taking a risk with a small squad? I think I saw something today that we have the smallest squad in the league.
Well, it's a smaller squad than last season, but he has more players he trusts than last season. When you add in Calafiori, Marino, he wasn't using Vieira, he wasn't using ESR. When you add in Sterling, he's got 3 players he can, and Timber. There's 4 players he didn't have that he does trust. I think numbers of players that he trusts is significantly up on last season. How small a squad we have, I don't know. I haven't really run the numbers on that, but I counted 18 players, outfield players, which is pretty bloody high, plus Nwaneri, that Arteta, in my books, would trust, including Jorginho. Okay, he's not using Jorginho, but I don't think we can say he didn't trust him. He's just what he has shown so far is he trusts Partey, and that he's trying to get Partey up the curve in terms of fitness readiness, that he's a real force this year. Maybe going in both directions if he can never get fit enough, but at least in possession. So no, I'm not going. I'm keeping an open mind whether we have a small squad. What matters is not having 22 players or 23 players. City use 16 and a half players in the Premier League each year. That's what everything below 16 and a half players get like 900 or above minutes. So that's what you care about. Who gets 300 or 400 minutes? Who cares?
Yeah, by the way, to your point, when we had the Tierney discussion before, I completely forgot Kivior. I didn't even name him.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
yeah, he's not in my 18, right?
Yeah.
I think we'll all come to the same 18 players that Mikel Arteta trusts, as long as you'll add in, give me an allowance for Jorginho when the time comes. He'll have his moment.
Let's do a couple quick hitters before we get out of here, okay?
Yeah.
Quick hitters. SD Gunnar Cap. What's happening with Jorginho? Seemed to be an important player towards the tail end of last season, which earned him a new contract, but feel like he's disappeared since then. Could he just be a late season player? ? Feel like he will have a role with Rice's red and Marino's injury. Quickly.
He seems very happy on the bench. I think Mikel and him know what this season is, which is, hey, he wants to stick around. Like, there was a lot of talk about good influence in the dressing room. Like, I think he's almost like semi-coach who knows he'll have some important minutes, some important games for us. He knows he's lined up for when it gets busy in the season and we're playing twice a week and somebody needs to come on 60 minutes. He understands his role in the pecking order. Injuries do happen, and he will have his moments in the season, and he knows that, and he's okay with it.
Yeah. Raya Deep Mountain Kai says, my first thought when I heard that was the first red card of Rice's career was he must have been gutted. It was for something so ridiculous. If you were a professional footballer and you only ever received one red card, what would you want it to be for to make it feel worthwhile? I think obviously celebrating my Champions League final winning goal by taking off all of my clothes and then being ridiculed. But, you know, it would be worth it. DParky13, I'm going to write my question just knowing that Elliot is going to just say whatever he wants and then ask someone to expand on his question. So here goes. Do you think Arteta will receive the recognition for his genius until Pep leaves? Do you think Arteta will never receive the recognition for his genius until Pep leaves City? I think that's a great question, but I'm going to rephrase it slightly. No, I'm kidding. I'll answer this one. No, he's not. He's not going to receive the recognition for his genius until Pep leaves or he beats him and wins a title. If Mikel wins a title this season, he will immediately be regarded and heralded for what he is, an absolute genius who has turned around the fortunes of this club, gone head-to-head with the beast that only Klopp has been able to slay. And he'll be regarded that way. And if he doesn't, he won't get it. Now, it will be unfair because I think when you can get Arsenal to 89 points, when you can get Arsenal 91 goals, the best ever goal difference is 28 wins in a season, you've done something incredible. He's restored this club to a level that I think a lot of us thought we were years and miles away from being at. We watched those Liverpool City battles and thought, we're so far away from this, we may never get there. And we got there, and he got us there. So he deserves that credit. But no, if he doesn't beat Pep to a title, he's not going to get that recognition, fair or unfair. Agree with that, Paul?
Yep. You got to win something big. So you want to be a genius as opposed to really, really good or surprised us. Got to win the league, preferably while Pep's around. Got to win the Champions League. So, Yep. That's what it
Quick
is.
One. Chris Branch asking, do you think there's any validity in the idea that Declan sending off was perhaps in part the ref putting Arteta in his... Nope, that's not the one I wanted to ask, even though I... do appreciate you sending the question. There was another Rice one, and now I can't find it, so I'll just basically ask it like this. No, there was another Rice one. Where is it? Okay, here we go. Summer MC13. Declan Rice was subject to some pretty unfair commentary during the Euros. Is there any way that mentally has been carried over and is affecting his play through the first few matches? I have to admit, Paul, Rice's sort of body language, his whole thing just seems less joyous.
Yeah.
And he went through a tough summer where he was criticized for his play in midfield. I think he was, I think unfairly maligned for his performances. And do you get the sense that there's a little less lightness and joy in Rice's performances and that he just seems like a player who's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders? Doesn't seem like he's playing with the freedom and enthusiasm that we're used to seeing from him.
Yeah. I don't think it's helped by the fact the role in the team is a bit one or two dimensional at the moment. I think give him a juicier role where he can show off his finest attributes as opposed to showing that he can also do a pretty good job as a left eight. Give him lots of the things that he's better than anybody else at, and he'll start to feel himself at the moment. But he could and should be a bit jaded, and he could be a little deflated after the summer. He's a professional. Once he gets the air whistling through his nose again, and he's bopping and bashing people, and the pitch is his canvas again. But he needs a juicier role that allows him to remind himself how good he is, to do things that surprise everybody else and himself again. And this role doesn't really allow him to do it. So,
well, we've got some time for him to come around, I think it is fair to say, and we've got some time to look forward to the derby, prepare for that, break that down. We're going to do a Brighton rewatch. We've done the Sterling scouting video. We've got power rankings tomorrow. You don't want to miss that. Paul, thank you for doing this. Paul's on Twitter, Pause My Pants. Thanks, man.
A pleasure. Woohoo!
We'll try to keep you going all through the interlow, and then the football gets relentless until the next interlow, which, you know what? I'm not going to do it to myself. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for listening to this. I cannot wait for the feedback on the age curve section. I think that was really the high point of the episode. But the rest of it was great, and I'm sure you'll agree. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10 Spurs. No.